Hello, I wanted to make a video about the VRChat performance settings. There's a lot to go over. I'll try to be quick and not explain things too much. This could help with your FPS, your lagging, stuttering, crashing, all these different things. I have my settings pretty conservative right now. I'm trying to save as much performance and as much memory as I can. The things that'll cause the biggest performance problems for you is likely to be your GPU and how much usage it's using and how much memory it's using. The CPU is influenced as well, but to most of the time, to lesser extent. You can see right now in this world, I have most of the avatars using fallback. I'm getting about 150 to 180 frames per second, depending on what I'm looking at. The more GPU usage you use, the slower to go. But once you run out of video memory, it's going to go really, really slow all of a sudden. It'll fall off a cliff. So the settings I'm using right now is I go to the gear here on your launch pad, and I'm saying I only want to see the nearest 5 avatars. That means that anybody that's further than that will be these like little transparent diamonds, and you'll only see the close ones. That helps a little bit. The thing that helps the most is actually under performance, under your main settings, and this setting, block poorly optimized avatars. The higher this setting is, the more avatars you'll see and the more memory it'll use and the more GPU it will use. So turning this down or up can affect your performance greatly. Another one is the safety settings. I'm using maximum right now, so you'll see that for a lot of people, their avatar is completely hidden. Only known and trusted users will I see their avatar, and friends I'll see everything for them. That can make a big difference as well. And I have the max avatar download size set to 5 megabytes. That means that anything over 5 megabytes won't be downloaded. Now, that's not directly related to performance. It is somewhat. Once it's downloaded, it doesn't make a difference. This setting doesn't affect how much memory it uses. This just means that, like, if the download file is over 5 megabytes, don't download it. That means it won't go into memory and it won't be analyzed to see what its performance rating is, because that happens on your computer, not on the server. So it has to download it. And it also uses network bandwidth to download that. So if there's a lot of avatars and or your network is slow, that can really slow things down as well. So these are the settings I'm currently using to get pretty good performance in this world where there are, let's see, how many people are there? There's 21 people in this world, and I'm guessing that what I'm seeing here is probably a little over half of that. So I can show you how these things vary. So I can turn this all the way down technically to 0. You can see some of the people here on the right, how they show up and disappear as I turn this up and down. This does the same thing for distance, but honestly, the number you see is more impactful than how far away they are. So I will turn these off completely so that everybody in the world can technically be seen. Now, most of these people are using fallback avatars, or I'm seeing most of their fallback avatars because of the other restrictions that I have. So I will start to disable these restrictions to show you what difference that makes. So one of the things that is going to be a real big deal is this avatar download size. Again, this doesn't directly influence memory. It'll look like it does. So if I turn this off, it's going to start downloading some of these avatars to compare them. And so you'll see as it downloads them, it's using network bandwidth now to download them. And once they're downloaded, they'll go into memory and VRChat will analyze them and say, should I show this or not? So it's weird that it has to load the avatar to decide whether to load the avatar, so to speak. So it's going to just start using memory right away. So once these numbers reach your maximum memory, it's going to absolutely just go really, really slow all of a sudden. So you have to be careful with that. That's why I have that set so I can individually enable people. So you can see even with this setting, most people are still using their fallback avatars because of other settings I'm doing that are restricting them, but it's already using more memory. So I can continue to use more and more memory. I can say, I only want to see, or I want to see poor and higher by saying very poor filter. So now it's going to show more avatars. Because once it's downloaded, it'll say, hey, I know how much memory this will use. I know what their settings are. So it'll start to show more. My frame rate will go down. The other setting being the safety setting. So like I said, a lot of these avatars are not being shown based on the user's rank. So if I turn this off completely, that means a whole lot more people's avatars are going to be downloaded and compared for performance. So you can see several more of these guys. Their avatars are being downloaded. and it'll start using more and more memory as they're all loaded and compared to see what their performance rating is. So it's kind of ironic that you're saying, hey, I don't want to see poor performance avatars, but it has to load them into memory to know if they're poor performance. So it helps, but this can quickly grow out of control if you even download the avatar, which is why I use that download limit, which again doesn't directly influence memory. It just says if I'm going to download this avatar or not. Once it's on your computer, it's already going to load it into memory just to compare it. So I can take this further by saying don't block anybody. That means I get to see very poor avatars as well. Now the thing about very poor is it can be a little bit very poor or very, very poor and use a lot of memory and a lot of usage. So just by blocking very poor, that can make a big difference. So you can see that already it does a little bit of cleanup once in a while. So the total memory usage is going to climb, but VRChat said, hey, there's a little bit of memory I don't need. I'm going to clean it up. But eventually it's going to load it back in there and use it up again. You can see it's still downloading a few people depending on their avatar size. So those are the settings that make the biggest difference on memory usage. So if you have changed some of these settings and you're not seeing a big difference here, you might need to restart the game or at least rejoin the world. So again, I don't have this limit on. I can turn this down to like, say 5 avatars. That's going to help mostly with the GPU usage here and less with the memory. Because even if they're not shown, they're still going to be in memory so that they can be shown when you get close to them. So if I start enabling these settings again, very poor and below, I'm not going to affect this avatar download size thing right now. And I'm going to say I only want to see, people who have basically known or higher, that helps too. And so I have those filters on and I have this filter on. And so I'm going to rejoin the world because you can see right now it's using 7 gigabytes of total memory, GPU memory, and 3.5 gigabytes of total memory from the game. So I'm going to rejoin the world. And you can see how the memory will kind of reset a little bit with these new performance settings.
Tell me once you've done it.
So you can see it's already a little bit better than it was. It is going to eventually start filling up the memory again, but it's better than it was. This was almost 4 gigabytes. I'm almost 3 now. This was almost 8 gigabytes. Now it's just a little over 5. So, those are settings that can help. Kind of on the side, there's 2 other settings that make somewhat of a difference. This setting here for graphics quality ultra, that doesn't make a very big difference. That's mostly for like dynamic lights and real-time effects. You probably won't notice a big difference whether you set it higher or lower either way, so that's totally up to you. This multi-sample anti-aliasing makes a pretty big difference just in GPU usage, a little bit in memory usage too. That's just how smooth and jagged the edges are. So if you're really running out of performance, you can turn the anti-aliasing down or off. That can help too. Particle limiter reduces the number of GPU particles that come from a shader. What that it means is like little stars and lights and stuff that come off of people. If they're not being shown, they won't affect your performance, but sometimes when people have them, there could be dozens or hundreds or thousands of them, and that can make a big difference. You can also turn down the mirror resolution. It'll make the mirrors a little bit blurrier, but it can also help with performance. Lastly, it's not a performance thing, but it can be a comfort thing, is using the earmuffs mode. You can turn that on, and you can see this little ring turns on, and it means that outside that ring, people will be quieter or completely off. These are the settings I use. Distance is how far away do they stay at full volume, and fall off is how much further from there do they start getting quieter. So if I set this to here, that means that everybody inside this red ring is full volume, and everybody outside that ring is my outside volume, which I have set to 0, so I will not hear them at all. I prefer a little bit of fall off, so that means that they get quieter as they get towards the gray line, and then they are completely quiet, in my case, outside of that setting. These settings also affect, like, if you hear people more in front of you than behind you, you can kind of play around with those settings, but this is really helpful in busier worlds where a lot of people are talking. So depending on how many people are around and who you want to talk to, you can make this a really small circle so that, basically only the people right in front of you are talking. You have to play with those settings yourself. That's just a comfort thing. So those are probably the most important performance settings you can change. As a quick recap, this performance setting here, block poorly optimized avatars, is going to be the biggest difference. Probably the second biggest difference is this safety setting, and that's not necessarily a performance thing. It just means it's hiding avatars altogether if people are lower ranked. Max avatar download size means you can control who's being downloaded and loaded into memory just to compare, what their avatar settings are. And then you can use the limit number of avatars you see and the avatar distance. Now, if you have it fairly restricted and you want to see somebody individually, it's easier on VR because you just point to them, but on the desktop here, there might be a better way to do it. I just know how to do it by opening the Launchpad, clicking somebody's avatar, and if it says it's using fallback, then you can say, I want to show their avatar, and it'll show their real avatar. It means that it'll use a little bit more memory individually, but you can turn people on and off so that, if somebody's individual avatar is really, really slow, it won't hurt you as much. Or if there's somebody you really want to see. Alternately, you can also hide their avatar regardless of what their setting is. And this is just the default setting to use everything else. And this is what everybody is on by default. So I hope that helps.